Good morning, third grade. Today we are telling time to the nearest minute and we are adding in AM and PM. Remember, AM means ante-meridium and PM means post-meridium. Now our little trick that we can use is AM is at morning. Now remember, it doesn't actually mean at morning, but this can help you remember. And PM could stand for past morning. Remember, it doesn't actually stand for past morning. It really stands for post meridium. But we can use these little sayings to help us when we are completing this page. So for AM, when we say at morning, we mean from midnight all the way until 11:59 a.m., which is around lunchtime, just a minute before noon. So all of those times within that window are going to be AM. And then PM is from noon all the way until 11:59 at night before the clock strikes midnight. So please keep this in mind as we review this page. I might be saying at morning or past morning. AM and PM don't actually mean those things, but this will help us. All right, so let's get started with number 6. The answer to number 6 is 7:17 a.m. The important thing that you had for number 6 was AM. When we see a digital clock like this, our answer should be pretty obvious because the numbers are right there. It's 7:17. AM, remember, that is at morning. At morning, we would eat breakfast, so this would be 7:17 a.m. It definitely wouldn't be past morning because 7:17 p.m., that's a little bit after dinner time. You might be doing your homework, watching TV, getting ready for bed. We wouldn't be eating breakfast at that time. So it is AM there. Number 7. The answer to number 7 is 1:20 p.m. Let's take a look at the clock first. So first, whenever I look at my hour hand, I notice that it is slightly after the 1. It is not yet on the 2, so we know we're definitely in the first hour. So our hour is 1. Now to figure out our minutes, I see that this minute hand is directly on the 4. Now you might know that when the minute hand is on the 4, that is 20 minutes. If you needed to count that out like this, 5, 10, 15, 20, that works too, but you needed to have 120. We also know that this is PM because 1:20 a.m. 1:20 a.m. is slightly after midnight. You're going to be sleeping at home at midnight. You will definitely not be in school having science class. So it is 1:20 p.m. The answer to number 8 is 4:08 p.m. When we look at the clock, we see that the hour hand is slightly after the 4. It is not yet on the 5. So the hour is 4. Then when we look at the minute hand, we see that it is right there on that little mark. So we can count this out. If you wanted to draw little flower petals or jumps, if that helps you, you can do that. So I start at the 12. I go to the 1, that is 5, and then I'm going to count by ones. 6, 7, 8. I'm stopping right there. So it is 4:08. I also know that this is PM because if it were 4:08 a.m., that would be really early in the morning. You would not be playing softball at that time. So I know it is past morning. It's 4 hours after noon. So 4:08 p.m., you need to have the time and PM. They are equally important. The answer to number 9 is 9:15 a.m. I know that it's 9:15 a.m. because it says quarter after 9. So it's after 9. That means I'm going to be in the 9th hour still, and I'm going to be a certain number of minutes after 9, and we need to figure out how many minutes exactly that is. So remember, when we see a quarter, when we're talking about time, a quarter with time is 15 minutes. Now I know that's confusing because when we were learning money, a quarter is 25 cents. But remember, when we are working with money, one whole would be 100 cents, and a quarter or a fourth of that 100 cents is 25. But when we're working with time, our whole is only 60 minutes, or 1 hour, 60 minutes. So a quarter or a fourth of 60 would be 15. So make sure you're able to differentiate between a quarter with money and a quarter with time. With time, a quarter is 15 minutes. And then, of course, the AM, it says in the morning. Remember our little trick. When it is in the morning, we are AM, at morning. So it should have been pretty obvious here that that's AM. The answer to number 10 is 7:06 a.m. So again, when I read carefully, it says 6 minutes after 7. I know it's after 7, so I'm going to remain in the 7th hour. I am looking over here, and it says it's 7 minutes after 7. So that means it's 7:06. Because it says in the morning, I know I'm going to use AM. Remember our trick? At morning, 7:06 a.m. The answer to number 11 is 8:36 a.m. To get that, you needed to pay very close attention to this right here. 24 minutes before 9 in the morning. Because it says before 9, I know I want to set my Judy clock to 9 o'clock, and I'm going to count backwards because we're not yet at 9, we are before 9. So automatically, if you should know that if it's before 9, we are in the 8th hour. So it's 8. And then to figure out the minutes, you could use your Judy clock and you could count back 24 minutes. You could have also subtracted. If you realized that if we were before 9, it is 8 something, you could have subtracted 60 minus 24, because if it is 9 o'clock, we know that's a whole, and when we're working with time, that's 60 minutes, so the minute hand would be at 60. So if we subtract 24 minutes from that 60, we would get 36. So that is where that 36 comes from, right there, 8:36. And then the AM, it says right here, it is in the morning. Remember our trick, AM, at morning. The answer to number 12 is 11:42 a.m. To get that, you needed to focus on this right here, 18 minutes before noon. So before is very important. It is not noon yet. We are before noon. So noon is 12 o'clock. If we're before noon, I know we're going to be in the 11th hour. So that's the first thing that you should have realized. It's going to be 11 something. If you wanted to, you could use a Judy clock, set it to noon, and then count back 18 minutes. And then you would have arrived at 11:42. Or you could have subtracted 60 minus 18. And when you do that, you get 42. So there's our 42. Remember, since we are before noon, we are in the 11th hour, so 11:42. This problem was really tricky when determining whether it's AM or PM, because at noon, remember our trick over here, noon is PM. But since we are before noon, we know everything before noon is AM. So this would be 11:42 AM. That was kind of trickier than the other ones that we've been practicing with today. Before we check our answer for number 13, I want you to notice number 13 says daylight savings time. If you didn't know what that was, you might recall in the fall when we turned our clocks backwards. And then in the spring, we spring forward, so we move our clocks ahead an hour. So with this problem, they're talking about that time when we change our clocks, and it just so happens that daylight savings time begins on the second Sunday in March at 2 in the morning. So really all they're asking us is to write this time with AM or PM. Now it says in the morning, so there's your big clue. Remember that when we're in the morning, we are at morning, that is AM. So the answer here for number 13 is 2 o'clock AM. For number 14, there were two answers you needed. First, you needed to list the start time as 9:23 p.m. and then the stop time as 10:10 p.m. Here are the clues in the problem that you should have paid attention to. So the first is right here. They started 23 minutes after 9. It's after 9 o'clock, so I know I'm going to be in the 9th hour. I need to figure out how many minutes. 23 minutes, so it's 9:23. This is 23 minutes after 9 o'clock. Now, because they're looking at stars, you need to think about what time of day is it going to be dark enough so that you can see the stars. At 9:23 a.m., it is light out. The sun is already up. So this should be p.m., 9:23 p.m. And then for the stop time, same situation, it's going to be p.m. And then your clue is 10 minutes after 10. So 10:10 is 10 minutes after 10 o'clock. You should have completed number 15 with Professor Berger before you started this page. So if you forgot to do that, please go ahead and scan the QR code and complete the problem with Professor Berger. Nice job today, third grade. You may look up on the board for your next activity.